Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is our November/December provider update. We are not going to have one specifically in December unless we get time-sensitive information that requires a special meeting. But for now, we're not planning to schedule a roundtable. Next slide, Drew. Thank you. Just wanted to remind you of who your JIUPK team is. Shay is on maternity leave right now. I am filling in as the UPK manager until further notice. Heather is on this call and she is one of our family resource navigators. Carla, yes, she's on this call and she's also a family resource navigator. Their primary role is to assist families in getting connected to a provider. So if you specifically have a family that you have run across that for whatever reason, your program will not work for them and they need to find another program, Heather or Carla are the people that you would be sending that family to. Drew is our pre-K assistant. All things support for UPK, and Ryan is our data specialist. He comes up with all of the data and provides all the data for us to make good decisions and to be tracking how it is we're doing. So it's a mighty team, and I'm very excited to be working with them. So next slide, please. So today's agenda, we've just covered the welcome and introductions. We're going to talk about, I think we're going to talk about UPK in El Paso County by the numbers. I did not ask Ryan to do that, but if he has it, that'd be great. We're going to do update from CDEC and questions, and then I want to spend at least 30 minutes on your feedback on planning for year 2 from a school district perspective. We still have the opportunity to provide and advocate on a state level for the things that our folks in our community feel like need to be done differently, and of course the things you would like to not see changed. And so we want to spend some time talking about that and make sure that we have all of that down. And then any additional questions you have will be covered after that. So every month we get a slide deck from the state of the things that they want to make sure that we are sharing with our providers. So we're going to go into that now and get that done with. I will tell you that this slide deck is up on the UPK page at JI. It's already up there as a PDF. And I'm hoping that all of the links work, but if they don't, we will make sure that that happens, or the information that is included in the links is also up there. So you can actually follow along if you want with the slide deck that's up on the UPK page. Next, please. So again, these are our provider updates for November and December. Let's start with enrollment guidance and walk-in enrollment. So we'll go to the next page. You guys can all read, but we're going to go over this and just make sure that everybody is aware of what's happening now in that, excuse me, there is no longer an algorithm that is running. It has not run since November the 6th. We have cleared out everybody that should have accepted or declined a match, every 4-year-old that should have accepted or declined a match by November 16th. If they did not do that and they went back into selected status, we are tracking them from that perspective. But there should not be anyone sitting anymore as a 4-year-old in accepted status that you did not have the opportunity to enroll. And so if you find that you've got somebody in accepted status that has not reached out to you, or you have not been able to get a hold of them and they are a 4-year-old, please reach out to us and let us know so that we can address that. Chances are pretty good that what we're going to do is remove that that accepted status and just get them off your list so that you don't have to deal with them anymore. So you have two ways to assist families. Families can reach out directly to you if they are interested. And if you have a seat available, you can tell the family that, you know, you'll be happy to enroll them and accept them in. And then you reach out to us at JI to have the student accepted in the portal. Please remember that school districts, your primary contact is me. So please send it to me, nglt@mac.com, if you want somebody accepted into a spot. Families can also reach out to us at JI. And if we see in your portal that you have an open seat, we are able to accept, but that's not what we're doing. What we are doing at this point, out of respect for you, is reaching out to you if a family says that they're interested in a particular seat and it looks like you have one. We are reaching out to you first and saying, this family is interested. Will you connect with them and let us know whether or not you want them enrolled? So the second part here is not how we are operating here at JI. Out of respect for you as a provider, to make sure that you're letting us know. We don't know whether you're holding seats for special education students or whatever. So the second part of that you can ignore. If they come directly to us, we will be sending them to you, and we will ask you in a timely manner to reach out to them and connect, and then loop back to us as to whether or not, no matter what the outcome is, so that we can make those notes in that family's profile. I have found that I have sent sometimes families to you 2 and 3 times because somehow or another we didn't put anything in the note that we had already sent it to you. And so I apologize for that, but or you didn't loop back with us and tell us that they don't want your program. So it's really, really, really important that you do that, or we're going to continue to send you families that look like they want you. Okay. All right. So we are now going to talk about, man, this actually belongs in another part of this. All right, we'll do it. I'm sorry, I did this slide deck this morning. I sent it to Angela to put up on the page, and she made some changes. So I'm now a little bit confused, but this one might have been my situation, but. So when you are choosing a start date for a family, please make sure that you keep the payment schedule in mind. And the payment schedule is up on the UPK page. It's also a part of this particular slide deck as a reminder. And then make sure that this is probably not going to apply to most of you because you offer your programs free. But if you have a tuition-based or you have a combination program where a family is being charged or being given 15 hours free, but you have a full day program, and so you're charging them for the rest of it, we're going to talk a little bit further about what that looks like. But you're getting paid as so kids that are enrolled by December 15th of this month, you're getting paid on January 8th for them, and that is their January payment. That is your January payment. So if you enroll kids before December 15th, you need to make sure that you're comfortable with the fact that you're not charging them for December when you're actually serving them. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation here, and I think that this really has only been come really clear in the past couple of months, where providers have said, well, wait a minute, I thought I was getting paid for this family for this month, and the answer is no, you're not. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to me. I know this doesn't pertain to most of you. Next. So when should you enroll and unenroll? You should enroll children as close to the actual start date as possible. And if you have a family who is leaving your program, CDEC has said that they will honor whatever policy you have in your handbook, so that if families have to give 2 weeks notice, et cetera, CDEC will honor that. But what that basically means is that you can unenroll after the 2 weeks. Or if you have another family that needs to go in there immediately, who needs that spot, and you can't increase your spots, you can certainly charge that family for those 2 weeks, and then unenroll them at the end of the time that they're actually attending, and get the other family enrolled in that spot. But it is permissible if you have something in your handbook that says that a family has to give 2 weeks notice. It is permissible for you to delay for 2 weeks before you unenroll. So you must change a student's status in the portal to unenrolled within 1 week after their last day. We are finding a big problem with this, where providers are not unenrolling their kids. They're doing it for whatever their reasons may be. They either forgot they couldn't do it and didn't tell us that they couldn't do it, or in some cases, I actually think it's trying to get to the 15th of the month so that they can be paid for that month. That's not permissible. And so they need to be unenrolled within 1 week. And that's per the provider agreement that everyone signed. And we at JI are never allowed to delete a child's former enrollment form. It stays in there. Okay, we can unenroll for you if you can't, but we're not allowed to delete the enrollment form. And so nobody's asked us to do that. But again, this is on the slide and something we're covering. Next. So additional hours awards, for those of you who do have full day programs, these are being looked at monthly. If a family needs to actually add in an organization, or I'm sorry, add in a factor, they can contact us to do that. Yeah. So in your enrollment report, there is an award additional hours column, and it should have a yes in it if that family is qualified for additional hours. Next. So this section, go ahead. This section is how to view enrollment dates. We are having some folks who cannot figure out what the enrollment date is in there. So you're able to see the start date that you entered on an enrollment form by selecting the child's name under enrolled in the provider portal. This will pull up the child information and the ID number, and next to the calendar icon, it says enrolled on. This is the date that was selected as the start date. And then there's another date there that says status last changed on. It's two different things. Drew, can you go to the next slide? This is what it actually looks like. Okay, so you have a child name, ID number, and date of birth. You have the provider name, the start date that was selected on the enrollment form. Then the program child is enrolled in whatever program they're in, and then the date of last status change and likely accepted from to enrolled. So if you need that information, that's where you find it. And again, this slide deck is up on our page. Okay, go on to the next one. So just to remind everybody in terms of additional hours, so for 4-year-olds, you have to be low income and have another qualifying factor, which would make you eligible for 30 hours per week. Those qualifying factors are listed below. The low income is a common denominator for everybody. And then the qualifying factor is what gets you to the next level of 30 hours. And then those of you who are offering programs for 3-year-olds, those 3-year-olds have to have an eligibility factor. So that includes income. They could be low income and qualify. They could be foster care and qualify. They could be a dual language learner and qualify. But you are not going to see those families unless they have one of those qualifying factors. They're not even sent through to you. Please remember that any child who has an IEP must go to the state. Okay. And I have been reminded that in very strong language over the last week that we are not allowed to touch applications with IEPs. I absolutely know that you are up against a December 1 count. I get that. And you still have to send it to the state. So they can see every time I log into an application, so they know when I am making changes for a child with an IEP. And as I said to Lori at one point in an email, they can't fire me, but they can make life very difficult for JI. So I am going to follow the direction, even though I can often take care of this in 5 minutes and it takes them up to 48 hours. I'm sorry about that. I understand the frustration. There's nothing I can do about it. Next slide. And so, as I said, we're already, they are continuing to add additional hours awards. This is not the slide deck that I sent this morning. Okay, let's go on to payments. All right, so as we talked about before, this is the payment schedule. So in December, you are going to get any payments for half-month rates for families that were enrolled in October 16th through the 25th. And that's going to come in one report. And then your November 15th enrolled is going to come in another report. Okay. And they probably are not going to come at the same time. So please wait and be patient for those reports, so that we are not flooding with Metrics IQ with questions that will be answered once you get the report. And so that, again, if you have payment questions, the bottom line is they have to go to Metrics IQ. We can't help you. There's nothing we can do. So I can commiserate with you. I can listen to your frustration and I can't fix it. So it has to go to Metrics IQ. Note here that it is the provider's responsibility to verify a child's date of birth and Colorado residency at the time of enrollment. If the child is not eligible based on the child's date of birth and the provider's kindergarten eligibility date, the provider must unenroll that child in that program. Again, we are, LCOs are going to have a special call on Thursday. The state is quite concerned about 3-year-olds that are in 4-year-old programs, and that the provider is being paid for those kiddos that are in 4-year-old programs. The system was not sophisticated enough to pick that up. And so therefore families were able to choose 4-year-old programs. And if the provider did not look at the date of birth and enrolled the child, they are not going to be paid for that kiddo. And then they're going to have to go back and collect payment from the family. And that's obviously a challenge. So make sure, and you guys, again, are not the ones that we're really concerned about, but make sure that you are checking the date of birth, because I can assure you we can't catch them all. We're trying, but we can't catch them all. Okay, we talked about the staggered payments, that there's the standard monthly payments, and then there's the delayed payments for late enrollments at the half-month rate. October was the last month that you would be getting a half-month rate. From here on, which is being paid in December. From here on in, there is no such thing as a half-month rate. Okay, next. Let's get rid of this. I don't want to talk about that. Allowable use of funds. So you guys, I think all are aware of what you can or cannot do with the funds. Again, this slide is part of the slide deck that is up on the UPK page. If you have any questions at all about whether or not you can use your funds outside any of this, you can certainly direct the question to me, and I will attempt to get an answer, but I can't imagine that you're spending money on anything else other than this anyway. So next slide. Okay, so there's a bunch of provider resources that are up. And again, this is very difficult to read, but the slide is on there. And these are things that through your provider login that you can access. Okay, lots of different information here about provider payments, qualifying factors, multi-age settings, special education IEPs, funding, and application and matching process. There's a provider guide and a provider training video. You guys have a lot more access to information than the family child care homes and the centers do, because of the number of times that you meet separately with CDE or CDEC. So my guess is that none of this would be a surprise to you, but it's here if you need it or want it. Capacity building grants and provider bonuses. Again, some of you this may not apply to, but we are told that if you did apply for a capacity building grant or a provider bonus, that it will be distributed by the end of December. Okay, couple of things that the state wanted to bring up about year two, and then we're going to stop and answer any questions that you have about anything that was on any of those slides, or even something that was not. And then we're going to start tracking your feedback for what worked well and what you would like to see changed in UPK for year two. So I know you all are tracking the quality standards that are being addressed. To the best of my knowledge, these quality standards will apply to all providers, whether or not they are school districts. Again, you may know a little bit more about that than I do at this point. But these standards are out there. The public comment period ended on the 22nd of November for these. They are now reviewing them, and then we'll come back with whatever decisions that they are going to make with regard to this. And so keep track of the quality standards. We're trying to make sure that you have all the links that you need up on the UPK page for this, but this is where we are at this point on quality standards. Next. And then I think you probably all have seen the fact that there is a new qualifying factor that I believe will actually go into effect, and likely it could actually go into effect for the end of this year. I don't know that that is the case. And this basically what they're saying is we're going to have a new eligibility factor that if you are low income and living at or below the federal poverty guideline, you will automatically be eligible for 30 hours. So for those of you who offer a full day program, your kids will not have to have a separate qualifying factor if they are if they're living in poverty. So that's a good thing. That's a step forward for families. Okay, let's stop sharing at this point, please, unless we'll go back to that if we need to. So what questions do you have? And because we have enough of you on this call, I would really appreciate it if you would either put it in the chat or raise your hand. No questions on anything that we've presented so far. You're all feeling good about that. When can we expect to receive our wait list? That is an excellent question. So Stacy, what we are doing right now is we are first and foremost keeping up with the applications that have actually come in after November 6th to make sure that those families get directed to someplace who can potentially serve them. And you at any point along the line can tell us that you've got an opening and you want to know who is on the wait list at a particular provider. So you know, we'll prioritize that. The squeaky wheel is getting the grease right this moment, quite frankly. I want you to remember that we have, along with school districts, we have almost 200 other UPK providers, all of which want the same thing. And so we are working on it as quickly as we can. But if you have a particular site that you know you have openings and you want to know if there's anybody sitting on the wait list, we can move that site up on the list. Heather and Carla and Drew are going to start working with me on helping me to get this out to you. But there are some other things behind the scenes that have to happen first, i.e. everybody who has requested, who has submitted a new application. We have to go into those applications. We have to put all of their selections in waitlist status, and we can't do that any other way except going into the application and then run your waitlist. So it's a multi-step process, and we're moving as quickly as we can. The enrollment slide that we need to notify JI when we unenroll. Should we be emailing whenever we unenroll a student? Probably not a bad idea. Just so that if you unenroll a student, then we can take a look at that application and find out what the status is of the family themselves. And so you guys should email me, and if you can give us information as to why you unenrolled the student. So did you unenroll because they moved out of state? Did you unenroll because they were unhappy with your program? Did they unenroll because the hours didn't work, but they're still interested in UPK? So that we can then contact that family and say, how can we help you get into another spot? Or we can withdraw the application because they're no longer living in the state and we don't want to mess with them anymore, right? We need to get them out of the system because we got lots of kids in this system, right? So if you can give us information as to why you unenrolled at the time you did, and it's just a quickie, nothing more than, hey, Noreen, I unenrolled this kid, they moved out of state. Hey, Noreen, whatever. And that's all I need. Okay. I think this will get simpler in year 2. I can't guarantee it, but I think it will. I think you're going to have a lot more control in year 2 over getting into the portal and doing the things that you need to do without having to come to us. But for now, we need to make sure that families who are not matched or go into an unmatched status because you've unenrolled them, that we know why and what to do with that application. Make sense? Okay. And if you forget, you forget. Don't worry about it. If we miss enrolling a student in UPK, is there ever a way to backdate the enrollment? Yes, there is. You have to send it to us and let us know that this child actually started on this particular date, and we can ask that it be backdated. However, I will not be able to guarantee you that it will be a payment catch-up. We can try. We have been encouraged to, make that known so that if at all possible, you can get the payment catch up. And Jenny's great about that. She's our contact up at the state. She's great about making sure that they're backdated. But that's what you would do. You would email me and say, I need you to backdate this enrollment. This kid started on X date. Okay. And then I can tell Jenny that, and I can look at it and I can say, so if you want to backdate from the 25th to the 17th, please don't bother. It's the 15th that is the pay date. Okay. If you want to backdate from, the 25th to the 1st, we should do it. Okay. So, you know, think about the impact of your backdating that enrollment and send it to me if it impacts your payment. If it doesn't, let it go. It does not matter. Just keep your own records. Okay. All right. Do you know when parents will be able to apply for next year yet? I have had a lot of parents that have called wanting to know. If you do not have a date yet, I completely understand. That's nice of you to understand, Jennifer. All right. So if you have asked all of the questions that you want about what's going on now, we're going to go into what we think we know about year 2 and what you want to be noted. Any other questions, Stacy?
Sorry, Noreen, I just didn't know if you saw my message in the chat. So sometimes we'll try to go into the application and type a note, like child moved or family, because there's not an option. We just had a parent who declined our offer. Child does have an IEP, so I wanted to note it on there that it was the parent's choice, you know, in addition to PWN and all of that. However, when we type a note in and we save it, it doesn't save.
Right.
So is that something everybody has an issue with, or is that just us?
We can't see any notes that you put it there. That much I can tell you.
Okay.
So,
well, we got out of it and went back in, and it wasn't there even for us to see. Like, we saved it, but then when we got back into the system, it wasn't there. So
okay.
Maybe it's just not a feature we have access to. I'm
going to check on that and see. But in the meantime, again, we're pulling reports all the time of families who do not have matches. Okay. And so when you know something about a family that would impact whether or not we should or shouldn't be contacting them anymore, you really need to send it to us, because I think we're driving these families crazy. And I also know that I'm sending you families 2 or 3 times because I'm not going back and checking whether or not I already sent it to you. I don't have the time.
Yeah,
So,
and it's good to know the notes aren't working, because we
yeah.
kind of thought we were communicating that, and
Right.
apparently we weren't. So
yeah, and that makes me feel a lot better. Not that the notes aren't working, but then I know you were trying to use them, but we can't, no, we can't see them. So I will check in to see if that is a feature that can be enabled and for you guys, but my guess is going to be no. And it's a pain in the neck and it takes a lot of time, and I get it, but please send it to us so that we can get those out of the system if they are no longer interested or have moved or whatever. Okay, anything else about the current year? Okay, and as always, if you get new information that you have not heard from us that we need to know, somebody please send it to us, because sometimes you get information quicker than we do, particularly around school districts. So let us know so that we're not spinning our wheels and wasting our time or your time. Okay. All right, so let's go on to I'll start with Jennifer's question. Let me tell you what we believe to be true. Okay. So we had an in-person Southeast meeting a month or so ago that Ryan and I went to, and we got some thinking around what the state was considering, but it was only a preliminary thing. They were initially thinking that providers would need to sign up in January, okay, and that you would be given a month basically to sign up, okay. Nothing is going to roll over. They're going to do things differently. They learned a lot of lessons from this time around. They're trying to make the whole thing much more user friendly. They're going to ask you different kinds of questions, or at least some different kinds of questions than they had before. So you will have to re-sign up, okay? And so plan on that. I cannot get a definitive out of the state that they're going to be ready by January, which tells me that they're not, but you should plan. for January. Because I don't want to be in a situation again like we had last year where all of a sudden you had to be enrolled by January 17th, and then making changes after that was a nightmare. So we want to make sure that you have thought through what you want to do with UPK for next year. Okay. And that you are prepared to, to sign up, that you know where your sites are going to be as best you possibly can, and that you're ready to go. Okay. My understanding is that their next part of their thinking was they were going to do priority enrollment in February. So that what they were going to do is that they were only going to allow students who met one of those priority enrollment factors, their families, to actually enroll in February. They're still thinking, to the best of my knowledge, that they're going to have a priority enrollment timeframe. Okay, that it will not be open enrollment at that point. I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you are aware of who is currently attending your 3-year-old program, who has siblings that are going to be in a school, because that is Melissa, it's the same ones that we have for this year. The priority enrollment factors are siblings attending that school, a child currently attending that school at the point that they're enrolling, maybe as a 3-year-old or however it is you're making that work, or employees of that school, children of employees of that school. To the best of my knowledge, those are going to be the 3 priority enrollment factors. When I brought up the fact that, I keep thinking about District 20 where there are way more kids that have priority factors than there are spots in schools, right? And that how are they going to manage that? Are they just going to allow everybody to sign up in a priority time frame, and then the school district decides who goes in? Or are they, among those priority students, going to run a lottery? I don't know. The state, at the point that I brought that up, had not thought about that. They were not planning to run the lottery. And I said, okay, well, then in that case, you've got to put it in the hands of the school district and trust them to decide who's going into those 16 spots that they have, or 8 spots, when there are 20 kids who meet eligibility factor, or meet the priority enrollment factors. So more to come on that. But to the best of my knowledge, there will be a priority enrollment period. Okay. Then there will be a period for open enrollment. So kids who do not have priority status will then have the opportunity to enroll. And that will be done on a lottery basis for sure. Okay. They're still extremely concerned about equitable access. They want to make sure that families have the opportunity, an equal opportunity, to enroll in a high quality program of their choice as anyone else who wants that seat. So there will still be a lottery involved, but I do not believe that the lottery will, I believe only the lottery will be involved in the open enrollment. I'm also very sure that CDEC is, you guys are probably going to be given a whole different system for children with IEPs, or process, not a different system, but process. And I'm also pretty sure that 3-year-olds will no longer be included in the Bridge Care UPK system. Thank the good Lord, because that has been a nightmare for us. And I'm sure it hasn't been all that fun for you. So they are trying to streamline that particular piece. So the UPK system will only be, I believe at this point, will only be for eligible 4-year-olds or year before kindergarten, based on your cutoff date. All right. I'm also told that they are going to cross-reference the home address of the parent with the school cutoff date. So, so that should be, more aligned than it was this year. So the whole system was based on October 1. And I think what they're going to do is try to geographically segment families who live in, as an example, District 49. And the cutoff date will be September 15th for them. And that we probably won't have to do the manual type of work that we did this year. So that's the latest that I heard. Ryan or Drew, you were on the Southeast call yesterday. Did you hear anything further that I am not aware of?
I did not hear anything beyond that, and we definitely did ask about what year two's application process is going to look like, and those conversations are being had.
Okay. So, yeah, so that's what I know, or think I know. Who knows what I really know? So comments, questions, things you want us to make sure that we are advocating for from your perspective. Can I still please repeat the part about September 15th again? Jennifer, that doesn't apply to you. It's a school cutoff date. Your school cutoff date is October 1. So you don't need to worry about it. I mean, I'll repeat it again, but you don't need to worry about it. Questions, comments?
Noreen, this is Stacy. I'm sure, and maybe you just don't know because they haven't made decisions yet, but if 3-year-olds are going through maybe our district application or some other application system, how are we doing funding for that allotment, right, that we had to attest to this year for that gen ed piece?
Right.
Did they give you any ideas about how that's going to be tracked, or are we just reporting that to them? Or
so it is my understanding that your allotment of funding has already been determined for year 2 for 3-year-olds. And that it was based on basically, you know, what you did last year going forward. And so there's my understanding again is that there is a potential increase for you based on, you know, some factor, and it's more like cost of living than anything else. But the numbers are essentially the same. Will you have the opportunity to apply for a change there? I don't know. I have not heard. Jennifer, the video will be posted on the UPK page. So I wish I could help you with that because I simply don't know. I mean, there certainly has been feedback from like, you know, Karen in District 3. You know, they've always had a policy of serving only 4-year-olds in CPP rather than taking CPP down to 3-year-olds. And so now they're not getting gen ed funding for 3-year-olds. Because that has been what they've been doing, and they were not given enough warning to decide that they wanted to do something different last year. And so, so the bottom line is that, you know, there are school districts that are not getting funding for 3-year-olds because they didn't have all of the information to make good decisions. So my guess is that there will be some opportunity to, you know, request something different for 3-year-olds. But I think what you should plan on at this point is the same amount of money plus whatever small increase they're going to give for 3-year-olds for next year for gen ed. Now, 3-year-olds with IEPs are funded separately. So that one, you know, they have to pay for those. They don't have any choice. But I wish I could give you more specifics on that. I simply don't know, but that is the plan to the best. That's what I would plan on if I were you. It's not going to be any less than that. It could be more.
Okay, and when you brought up the attestation, we were talking about this, it made me think about, I thought there was going to be a separate attestation form for 4-year-olds. Has anybody heard of follow-up on that? No?
No, they're using what they're doing right now, and who knows what they'll do for next year, but what they're doing right now is just using the enrollment form as, you know, as essentially your attestation for that child. Okay, so they're using the enrollment form, which is why those of you who enrolled families or children before that enrollment form was available had to go back and do it. Okay, because that's what they're using, is that attestation, that enrollment form as your attestation. And then that's what they're using to pay you. Okay. If a program is considering opening a new site, but it will not be licensed till June or July, what is your recommendation? In the past, a program had to be licensed first. We won't meet the January deadline for signing up. I think we're going to have the same situation that we had this past year, Melissa, where you know, when you come online, we're going to have to get you added in, but that is not a pretty process, and hopefully it gets better. But I don't see it being much different than what we had to do this year. Sorry. The program does have to be licensed. There's no question about that. I mean, the licensing has to come first. So, you know, if you really are planning to do something different, move centers or something of that sort, man, think about the impact of that with regard to UPK right now, because you know, District 20 can tell you some really horrible stories about what had happened with having to move sites and all the rest of that, and how long it took. And how long it took for them to get payments straightened out as a result of it. It's not pretty. So think that through. All right, what else do you want to either ask about for next year or want to make sure that we have on the list for things that, you know, really bugged you this year that, you know, you would like to see done differently for next year?
I'm going to unmute for this one just because I'm still thinking it through in my head, and it may not make sense if I try to write something. I'm thinking about the communication with when the cycles are run, what we can expect, clarity on all of that. That was really difficult to operate last year when we didn't know what was happening and things would change at the last minute. So I'm requesting that we get clear upfront communication in writing of what we can expect those cycles to look like.
Okay. Gee, that's a big ass, Melissa. I'm teasing. They are planning to run many fewer algorithms this next year. And I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like. Initially, they had said that they weren't going to run any algorithms over the summer because of school districts not being able to staff it. And I'm sorry, but, you know, LCOs came back and said that's not going to work for the private providers. It's just not going to work. So, so they're going to have to run algorithms over the summer. But I think they're probably only running 1 or 2 over the summer. And you'll have, I hope you'll have the dates so that you can staff to that for that short period of time if you do not have people on staff normally. But you know, you guys know, I mean, this is a you know, this is a multi-variety system here, and it can't just be catered to school districts. So for providers and for family child care homes and centers, et cetera, who are enrolling all the time, they have to be able to have matches come their way and get them handled before payment starts. So but I do believe that they're planning to run fewer algorithms, and yes, I will make sure that that is on the list. better communication with families and parents. We also want to know what communication parents are receiving before they receive it. Yeah, that's great, Stacy. I'll put that on the list. Sounds good. What else? And communication soon about enrollment for next year. Families are asking. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. What else? How did the payment process work for you?
I think we're still waiting to find out. I'm trying to make sense of it all. And, the business office is working on making sure we're getting paid for the kids we have and figuring out why we're getting paid for kids we don't have. But, so I think we'll know more probably in the next couple of months, at least in my district.
Okay. All right.
Noreen, it's hard to ask questions. There's just so many unknowns, right? I mean, the feedback given was fantastic. I think our families need better communication and trying to get in front of things and be proactive instead of trying to fix everything that's broken. But just being able to ask questions today, man, is just like wait and see again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say that we have been very, very, very clear with Jenny, who is our Southeast LCO specialist. And anytime that we have been in a meeting with people, in addition to Jenny, we have made it very clear that, not having timelines laid out and not having the basic information that is needed when we're almost at December 1. And, it was thrown out there to us as an LCO that they were thinking that enrollment for providers would start in January. We've made it very clear that it's not acceptable to not have those timelines laid out. So, but the challenge is, and I think you guys have all had, probably you guys more than anybody else have all had a little bit of a taste of this, is that anything that they do has to go through about 50,000 layers of approval. And they are absolutely determined this time around that they are going to be thoughtful, that they are going to make sure that they have stakeholder input, blah, blah, blah. All of that is great. It's incredibly noble. Okay. I love it. Of course, the big problem at this point is the fact that, they have to sift through all that stakeholder feedback, and then they have to come up with something that they think will work. And then they have to take it through, 10 channels in order to get it approved before anybody, and attorneys, before they are able to put it out there. And so they're just not willing to commit at this point. But I also think that they have heard that these last minute surprises and these last minute changes are not in anybody's best interest. So that's why I'm saying to you, prepare for January. I will almost guarantee you it's not going to be January. But prepare for January. So that you're not surprised, so that you've thought it through. And you guys all have great finance people on your staff. You know what you're doing. And if you need any kind of support in terms of thinking through, should I go this way or this way? How UPK is going to fit into this? How is CCAP going to fit into this? For those of you who run full day programs, please call me. I'm happy to walk it through with you and talk it through with you. Okay. And if I can help, I will. I'm more concerned about the private providers than I am about you guys. They don't have the same level of support that you do in your finance people and things of that sort. So, but you know, I get it. And we will reiterate once again that the lack of understanding of timelines is not acceptable. Yeah. Ensuring the funding is accurate is a huge administrative load. I know. I absolutely know. So, I mean, I think we're all going to get used to at some point along the line, when, you know, the whole system of, you know, you've got to have kids enrolled by this time in order to get paid for this and what this looks like. But I mean, there were a lot of surprises this year. And, you know, some of you are really small school districts and those surprises have hurt you financially. The larger ones, I mean, obviously, you have the ability to be able to absorb a few more of those surprises than the smaller ones do. But imagine you're a family child care provider and you're in this system, and all of a sudden you're realizing that a child that you enrolled in, you know, early November, that you're not being paid for them, and you haven't talked with the parent about paying for November. So it's just really challenging right now, and their businesses are in jeopardy as a result of that. So you know, this has got to be done better this year, and we're doing everything we can to push it. All right, well, you know where to find me. And if at any time I am not available or do not answer you quickly enough, yeah, I know. Jim, I'll address that in a second. Do not answer you quickly enough. Please feel free to send an email to upk@jointinitiatives.org. We have somebody monitoring that every day. And also, there is 1 week over winter break where JI will be closed. And it will be between Christmas and New Year's. None of us will be checking email. I mean, we're going to give our staff that break. Anything before that and after that is being covered. Even if JI is closed, it's being covered in terms of addressing what you need. So, and I'm the coverage, so send it to me. Okay. But that 1 week in between, we will be closed. And unless you have I mean, I'm hoping you're taking some time for yourself during that time too. So hopefully you don't have an issue. And if we will adjust if we have to, based on whether or not the state comes back and says we are doing a January sign up, then if I have to be available over that week, I will be to help you, but don't want to be. All right. So any of the rest of you who have 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock meetings and would like to skedaddle off, there are a couple more questions here that I'm going to go ahead and address. In the 3-year-old application, it asks if the student has limited English proficiency. This confused a couple of parents whose child didn't talk much anyway to get them reword. That is on the list, and we will make sure it continues to be on the list, Jim. When I see that and the home language is English, I take it out of there because it automatically qualifies them for 30 hours if they're low income. And that's not what that means. So we have to address that. But it's on the list, and I'll make sure it stays on the list. Okay. Anything else we can do for any of you at this point? I appreciate your hanging in there with us. I know that this has been incredibly challenging. And you know, we're all in this together. We're going to figure it out together. We're going to make it work. And as I promise you, it's going to be easier in year 2. I know it is. Okay. So just hang in there. All right. Thanks, everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Take care.